What's up, gamers? Welcome welcome back to my self-titled YouTube channel. I am the eponymous Fiona. Thank you for joining me today as we take a deep dive into Leah from Stardew Valley. We're going to be talking about her likes, her dislikes, her heart events, her arc as a character, her narrative design. There will also be an extended narrative design tangent at around 10 hearts where we will talk about bisexuality. So that's the end of the intro if you don't care about like me or my life. You can just go into the chapters and skip to the next one if you don't want to hear about personal stuff. But if you do care, I got married. Ta-da! Can you still see my nails? They've got little dried flowers on them. Ooh. It was the best day of my whole life. Me and my husband are at Mitski moment. Me and my husband are still processing it. The wedding was Saturday the 4th of May and we just got our pictures back, which it's literally been a week, so that's very fast. And we were looking through them and it was like, I don't know, it's hard to process something like that. It's a very relaxed wedding. We planned it specifically so that we could just kind of chill out the whole day. And we had loads of people come up to us and say it was the best wedding they'd ever been to, so I did a pretty good job. So I did take a picture specifically for this YouTube channel. I brought this with me, so it's a bit bent now. Here's the picture. So in the picture, my husband is like proposing to me with a mermaid's pendant and I'm in my wedding dress going, oh, looking all bashful. I know that doesn't really make sense because we did get married and so he wouldn't be proposing to me, but how else am I supposed to integrate the Stardew Valley wedding universe? I can't invite Lewis. But yeah, it was really great. Thank you for all of the well wishes and the comments. It does mean that I'm now significantly less busy. So basically, I'm gonna put all of my time into this YouTube channel. My goal is to upload a video every 2 weeks. We'll see how well that goes. We'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna put my whole Fiona-sy into it. I hated that. One more thing, I did crochet this like bandana for the video because she's ginger. I'll put the link to the pattern in the description. But I can't help but feel like it doesn't sit quite right. I did look up a tutorial on how to put it on. I think it's because I made it out of cotton and they made it out of acrylic, so it's a bit stiff. I don't know. I think it looks cute. So I got my roots done. Okay, enough talk about my personal life. Time for Leah. So like with all the videos in this series, we're going to start off with Leah's synopsis from the devlog. Leah lives alone in a small cabin just outside of town. She loves to spend time outside, foraging for a wild meal, or simply enjoying the gifts of the season. She's a talented artist with a large portfolio of work, yet she's too nervous to display it to the public. Maybe you can give her a little confidence boost? So yeah, Leah is an artist. She primarily seems to work with sculpture, but she does sometimes reference other mediums, like she references making a collage out of the fall leaves, and she paints at an easel, so I guess she doesn't work exclusively with sculpture. She moved to Stardew Valley from the city.
The city.
In her 10 heart scene, we do find out that this city is Zuzu City, which is like the nearest city to Pelican Town. She tells you in her 2 heart scene that she visited Stardew Valley as a kid, and she knew she had to come back one day because it had great artistic potential. We don't really know how long ago it is that she moved here. From reading all of her dialogue, the only time she really references how long she's lived here is when you're married. I never thought I'd receive a mermaid's pendant so soon after moving here. I'm happy about it though. And this could be pretty much any period of time based on what she classes as soon. I think given what we learn later on, you know, that her ex is still calling her, it all feels quite recent. I'd say she moved here within like the last year or so. So when you first meet Leah, she says, "Hello, it's nice to meet you. You picked a good time to move here. The spring is lovely." So our first impression of Leah is that she's quite friendly. She's interested in nature and the seasons. This is kind of off the top of my head, but I feel like she's the only character that really appreciates the spring. Alex and Haley just look forward to summer. Abigail just wants it to be fall so that she can be in her spooky girl era. Emily prefers jewel tones to pastel tones. Same. But Leah appreciates the spring. She appreciates every season for its own reasons, but she particularly likes spring because she uses the forageables to make salad. Speaking of, we'll move right into her likes and dislikes because they're quite evocative. I just find even looking at them gives you such a vibe. So Leah loves salad. Breaking news. She's always talking about salad. She is salad's #1 fan. She's that meme from 2010 of women laughing with salad. Her love of salad is iconic for her, and this is probably mostly because it's quite an easy, loved gift to get. You can just buy a salad from the saloon, as opposed to someone like Alex, where you have to cook him a fucking meal. But she also talks about foraging a lot. There's actually a lot of wild food in this area, if you know where to look. I've been having fresh salad almost every day. Foraging is a specialty of mine. Someday I'll make you a fresh salad. I found some wild mushrooms over the weekend. I had a huge plate of wild mushrooms and eggs for breakfast today. I'm still full. Keep your nose to the ground and you'll find some mushrooms yourself. I'm sure of it. So she's a person who's very self-sufficient, living off the land kind of vibes. So this connects to her feelings about nature. I hate to be blunt, but if we don't treat nature with respect, our grandchildren will be doomed. Don't you think so? This morning I accidentally stepped on a bug. Sometimes I think it's impossible to live without destroying nature in some way. We wouldn't be able to survive without nature. It's good to remember that. So she respects nature, she values nature. This definitely ties to her moving away from the city, but we'll get more into that as we move forwards. This all also ties into how Leah experiences the world. So here are a few of her lines of dialogue. You can tell it's summer by the sweet smell of nectar wafting through the air. It's so nice to live by the river. I fall asleep to the soothing sound of water every night. I love the way everything looks when it's covered with fresh snow. The simple things in life are best. A soft summer breeze, majestic clouds, and a goblet full of Stardew Valley red. Within just these 4 lines of dialogue, she's referenced all 5 senses: taste, touch, sound, sight, smell. I can never get all 5 of them in one go. There's always one I forget. So she's a person who's very sensory. She's very grounded in the here and now, as opposed to someone like Abigail, who's always thinking about something else, and Emily, who was kind of off with the fairies a little bit. Leah is very centered. Boots on the ground. She loves being outdoors, she loves nature, she loves fresh food and finding it herself. She's got kind of a gatherer personality, the kind of person where I feel like she'd be happiest living in 5000 BC, you know? I think this ties as well into how she decorates her house. So she says, decorations accentuate the feeling of the season. I think it's a worthwhile tradition. And the appearance of her house does change depending on what season it is. Spring, summer, fall, winter. So she's trying to accentuate the feeling of the season. She appreciates each season for its uniqueness, which links again to how she's very present in the moment. So some more of her likes and dislikes. I have to do it with my right hand. So she likes purple mushrooms, wild horseradish, and spring onions, which just goes with her love of healthy food and nature. A lot of her likes are things that she could potentially find herself, like forageables, which goes with her, self-sufficiency. She dislikes pink cake, cookies, and ice cream, which is such a bummer. And her hates are really interesting as well. So she hates bread and pizza, and she also hates hash browns and pancakes. Not even Harvey hated bread. He just disliked it. So her dislikes are all kind of sugary foods. Her hates are all what you would class as beige foods. British tapas.
British tapas. British tapas.
We get it, girl. You're low carb. It does seem like her disliked and hated foods aren't coming from a place of judgment particularly. Harvey didn't like certain foods because they were unhealthy. Because when you give her a dislike gift, she says, I guess everyone has different tastes. But then if you give her a hated gift, she says, this is a pretty terrible gift, isn't it? Which is kind of judgy, so I don't know. To be fair, if someone just handed you unsealed bread in the middle of the street, that would be a terrible gift. I actually think she's more honest than she is judgy. So if you ask her to dance at the flower dance and you have less than 4 hearts, she rejects you and she says, I'll be honest, I don't want to dance with you. Yes, queen, reject me. So she doesn't want to lie to you. She doesn't want to make some excuse to you to get you to back off. She values honesty and she values her own comfort. She's not going to dance with you just to make you feel better. She's going to do what she wants to do. Something else about her food intake that I find interesting is that she hates bread, but in the winter she'll say, I'm having a hard time finding fresh food to eat. I've been eating a lot of bread. And I guess this could just be what it says on the tin, It's harder to find salad in winter because nothing grows. But she hates bread. She doesn't just dislike it. She hates it. It seems like winter is at least her least favourite season, and at most she gets, some kind of seasonal depression because her dialogue does get less chirpy in winter. Time seems to move slower here. When I lived in the city, the year went by so fast. It gets pretty cold in my little cabin. I just snuggle up under a huge blanket, and I'm okay. Time feels like it's moving slowly. She's cold. I think, she accepts winter as part of the year. She accepts the changing of the seasons, but that doesn't mean that she still like it. So for age, we don't know how old she is. There's very little to go off of in terms of clues. She lived with her ex in the city. She was able to then move all the way out to Stardew Valley on her own. It implies a certain level of maturity to do a big move on her own. But then there definitely exists ballsy enough 19-year-olds to move across the country on their own. From looking into people's headcanons online, it really depends. Some people say she's 23, some people say she's 35. It really got me wondering why there's an older bachelor's note, but there's not an older bachelorette's note. Like, what's the purpose of the older bachelor's note? Why the men and not the women? This is absolute pure speculation, but labelling some of the women as like older might have been seen as lowering their appeal because women are seen as less valuable as they age. They're seen as less viable romantic partners. I don't know, but why clarify it for the men? Harvey was already quite obviously an older bachelor because of his face and the fact that he's a doctor. I don't really know what impact it makes on Elliot's story to know that he's older, except for like it sheds a bit of light on him. I think it makes a difference to Shane because we know, he's lived a bit of a life. He's gone through some stuff before he gets to the point he's at when you meet him. It's just never really occurred to me before. Why is there that information for the men and not the women? I can't really come up with a reason except for that it's kind of a double standard. But let me know if there's a more like charitable interpretation that I'm missing. Concerned ape cancelled. So if I were going to write an older bachelorette's note, I personally would put Leah on it and I would put Emily on it. Mary was definitely quite young because she's younger than Sebastian and Sebastian is a younger bachelor. Haley gives very young vibes. So does Abigail. I'm not sure about Penny. I haven't done my Penny research yet. So I personally think that Leah is at least 25, potentially up to 30s, 33. She's got that sense about her of having been settled into a life long enough to realise that it's not what she wants. I'm kind of spoiling a little bit of what's coming in the future for the purpose of this conversation, but she got out of her relationship while she was still young and flexible, which in my opinion isn't really the kind of thing you think about when you're in your early 20s. You're not thinking, I'm still young and flexible, I should end this relationship now. You're just thinking fuck that shit, I'm gonna go do something else. Personally, I would read her as late 20s, 28, 29. She's still young, but she's getting to that boundary of 30. She can feel herself aging, she can feel the time passing. So maybe that spurred her to make that big change of moving before it was too late. But then we don't know how long she's lived here. So she could have been 28 when she moved to Stardew Valley and now she's 35. I don't know. The amount of times I say I don't know in these videos is crazy. For relationships, she's friends with Elliot. They dance at the flower dance. This makes sense. They're both artists. They both live outside of town. They're kind of two sides of the same coin in terms of their characters. Gingers. Struggling artists. Hermits. They're different in terms of their personalities and their storylines, but they do have a lot of similarities. It's actually really interesting to think about the canon flower dance pairings like that, two sides of the same coin. Alex and Haley have a lot of similarities. So do Elliot and Leah. So do Abigail and Sebastian. I haven't gotten to Mary or Penny yet, so I'm not sure about them. Emily and Shane are kind of opposites, arguably, but I think that's probably because they were added afterwards. And I still ship it. Very grumpy sunshine vibes. TikTok would love it. Leah's heart events are very illuminating about her. She's one of those characters where we learn things as she reveals them. So we're just going to get into those and we'll talk more about her character as we learn things. So for her 2 heart event, you enter Leah's cottage while she's there. She's surprised when you enter, tells you to come in. She's working on a sculpture, tells you, come here, watch this. She keeps sculpting, says she's revealing the essence of the wood. Then she says, once you get past the outer layers, the true nature starts to show. You get a choice. It's the same with people. I actually prefer the look of raw, unadulterated wood. Creepy. May I have a kiss? All of these lead to pretty interesting outcomes, so we're going to go into all of them. By the way, it did say unadulterated when I screen recorded it. That was back in 1.5. But in 1.6 it got corrected to unadulterated. Because unadulterated is not a word. For this playthrough, I answered it's the same with people. And she was initially confused, but then she agrees with you. If you tell her that you prefer the look of raw, unadulterated wood, she says there's nothing wrong with that. There's lots of beauty to be found in raw, untouched nature. But as a human, she's also interested in how we shape and interpret the world around us. She's essentially saying that she's interested in art. If you ask for a kiss in a creepy way, the outcome changes depending on whether you're playing as a boy or a girl. If you're a boy, she calls you a pig, she tells you to get out, and she hits you with her hammer. If you're a girl, she reacts by acknowledging your attraction to her as queer, replying, me too. She blushes and says it's good to know. And then she hits you with her hammer. Either way, if you ask her for a kiss, the scene ends here. If you pick one of the other choices, she then tells you she first visited Stardew Valley on holiday with her parents as a child. She knew she had to come back someday as it has great artistic potential. Then she gets stressed, admits it's not easy to pay the bills as an artist. The player gets an idea, and you get another choice. Why don't you have an art show in town? Why don't you sell your art on the internet? Again, this leads to different outcomes. If you tell her to have an art show in town, she considers it. Says it could set the wheels in motion to making Pelican Town a true art destination. Then she looks sad, says she'd be crushed if no one liked her sculptures. She says she'll think about it, and thanks you for stopping by. You go to leave, and we fade to black. If you tell her to sell her art on the internet, she considers that too, but says she would need a computer, and that would be expensive. She says it was nice of you to visit. You go to leave, and we fade to black. What's up, gamers? This is not editing Fiona, this is Fiona who is still working on the script. So I'm currently playing the game to try and get to Leah's 2-heart event so that I can pick the other options, because I didn't screen record them the first time. I'm trying to pick the different options so I can show you. And I think it's so funny how like elusive she is, that what I'm doing right now is just sitting here like waiting for her to come out of her cottage with some salad. And I'm just sitting here and chilling and working on my crochet, just waiting for her. When will Leah return from war? Oh, she's here. Come back. Come back. Okay, so this is the 7th of the romanceable NPCs I've done a deep dive into, and this is definitely the longest and the most complex 2-heart scene so far. For no other 2-heart scene, except for Harvey's, have I felt the need to show all the options, all the different outcomes, because they weren't really that different or unexpected in terms of the characters' reactions. They didn't tell us anything that couldn't be like quickly summarized. You tell Alex he's arrogant, he reacts badly. Duh. Could have seen that coming. But this is something we'll see with Leah's story, that it has more narrative complexity in terms of its design compared to the others. More things branch, more choices are saved. We'll get into this more with the 8-heart event when we see the outcomes of those choices, but for now we'll just look at everything we have in front of us. So Leah as a person is not very like socially adept. She's not bad by any means, but one of the first times you talk to her, she says, "Hi. Oh, you want to talk? The landscape around here gives me a lot of ideas. The terrain is almost like a sculpture itself. I don't make art for money. It's just an urge that I have. Farming seems like a very rewarding profession. You get to create delicious food for everyone. You're probably busy. Sorry." And she has another early line of dialogue. It's simpler to be friends with the trees. They don't have much to say. So in the first quote, she seems surprised that you want to talk to her. She ends up like word vomiting, oversharing. Then she kind of catches herself and retreats back inside. And in the second quote, we can see that she thinks trees are simpler because they don't have much to say. So other friendships are therefore complex because they have more things to say. We can interpret this in a number of ways, but related to the first quote, it seems like she's just referring to like the complexity of conversation. I feel that way a lot too. Like there are, millions of potential ways to like reply to someone, but you have to choose from, only the options within the like socially acceptable boundary, and also the option that's like funny and charming, and you always feel like you pick the wrong one. I almost definitely have autism, so that doesn't help either. She's quite comfortable in the 2-heart scene with you though. She invites you in. She talks to you about her sculpture. She kind of uses the art as a way to talk to you. It's reminiscent of Alex only talking about Gridball, of Harvey opening up in his 8-heart scene because he's talking to you about planes. She's using her art as a way to connect with you. We can see that with that previous quote where she overshares. She gets going about her art and, her passion for fresh food, and she has to stop herself. Because of this, the way that she actively stops herself from talking, I feel like we are entering special interest territory. I think most, if not all, neurodivergent people know that feeling of like, you're just getting started, you're amping up to talk about your special interests, and then you look at the other person and you're like, oh, you're bored, you're not listening, you don't care. Or that person tells you, please stop. And you have to kind of cut yourself off. I think that's at least partly why she reacts badly if you ask her for a kiss. Obviously, that's the wrong thing to do. It's labelled as creepy, and it is pretty creepy. It's not as creepy as it would be if you just outright kissed her, but that's pretty low bar. But it's also like she's trying to engage with you on a subject, and all you can think about is your own desires. Like the Haley 10-heart scene. Anyway, that's my neurodivergent interpretation of Leah. Almost all of the videos I've made so far, I've had comments of people saying that they interpret the characters as, autistic or neurodivergent. And I think that's really interesting. I think you could reasonably make the case for every single romanceable NPC that, they're on the spectrum. They're my comfort characters. So, as I said, if you ask to kiss her, you get a different reaction based on if you're playing as a boy or a girl. If you're a boy, she calls you a pig. She tells you to get out. She hits you. We love that for her. Violence is always the answer. If you're a girl, she still hits you, but before she hits you, she kind of flirts with you. She expresses her interest in girls, says it's good to know that you're interested in girls too, with a blush. That's flirting. And then she hits you anyway, which is also flirting. This is the first instance that I'm going to talk about in this video where I feel like queerness is kind of mishandled in this storyline. Don't get me wrong, it is kind of refreshing that she just owns it. She doesn't go, oh, I didn't know I liked girls until I met you. I didn't know if you'd feel the same way about another girl, like some of the other characters do. She's just like, me too, which is a nice change. It's not a big deal. But no word is ever said. Let's look at the text. Let's examine the sacred texts. Oh, you're me too. That's good to know. Is the word gay in there? Lesbian, queer, bisexual, pansexual, unlabeled, questioning? No. There's no word. There's only the implication, the ... question mark. We, as the player, are prompted to fill that in with our own chosen word. What is she actually telling us? We don't know. We'll never know. There is only space in which to project our own feelings, our own interpretation. In a way, I see the benefit of this. You're not pinning her to one identity. If the player wants her to be bi, she's bi. If you want her to be a lesbian, she's a lesbian. If you want her to be pan, she's pan. She can be whatever you want her to be. In a way, she's saying she is whatever you are, because she says, you're me too. Oh, you're bi? Me too. You know? But this, coupled with the issues I have with the 10 Heart event, which we'll get to, kind of leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. I feel like it's a lack of commitment masking as representation. It's a misunderstanding of the subject masking as open-mindedness. Like I said, I'll get into that a lot later, but I just want to be clear now. I'm not saying like the developer is like homophobic. I'm not really saying it's like, you know, problematic. I don't know the developer's orientation. I don't care, honestly. I'm definitely more of like a practical rather than a cultural critic in terms of like just looking at the text itself. It makes me uncomfortable to think about this like real life person out there and try and like bring him into it to like analyze him. That's why I only mentioned one thing like really briefly in the Elliot video, because I don't know this man. I'm not hyperfixated on this man. I'm hyperfixated on the game. Good job making it, I guess, but what's that got to do with me? So my criticism on this subject very much comes directly from the text. I don't know what the intention was. I'm sure it was good. He seems nice. So that being said, I want to go back to how Leah essentially flirts with you if you're a girl and calls you a pig if you're a guy. It feels like this was done to avoid, you know, you hit on her as a girl and she hits you and that would come off as homophobic. She still hits you. She's not comfortable with your creepy actions. But why blush first? Why, you know, tell you that she's queer too? It's giving a certain amount of leeway to the player if they're a girl, which I find kind of uncomfortable. Why is this creepy action a lot less damning if it's a girl doing it? From Leah's perspective, she might be so genuinely surprised to hear that you're queer as well that that reaction comes first and then the anger kind of follows. But none of it feels very reactive. She's blushing, she tells you that's good to know. Then her hitting you with her hammer almost comes as like an afterthought. I think, personal opinion, what happened here is that the boy version came first and the girl version came later. Initially, maybe they played out the exact same, but then there was a worry that her hitting you would be seen as her like not being interested in you if you're a girl. But the creepy action couldn't just be let completely off the hook. So the change was made that she expresses interest in you and then hits you. But then there's no concern about if she hits you as a boy, that might make you think she's not interested, putting you off the romance path. Once again, we'll get more into this later with a chunky narrative design tangent. But it feels a little bit like a misunderstanding of a queer player, almost like hand-holding. She's gonna hit you. You did wrong. But don't worry, she's still into girls. Okay, so back to the scene. We get a lot of talk about money in this scene. She says it's hard to pay her bills as an artist, and her number one concern if you suggest selling the art on the internet is how expensive a computer would be. I'm gonna ignore the elephant in the room of why didn't she just use someone else's computer? Why doesn't she do it on her phone? Why doesn't she have a computer in the first place? What time period is this game supposed to be set in? That's for a different video. I'm all out of lore after the Krobus video, okay? I want to just talk about gay art. So this is something else that Leah and Elliot have in common. Passion for their art, but a very real world concern about money and practicality. But it's a different kind of thing. With Elliot, he just like couldn't write the book. So he was spending all of this money to live in Stardew Valley without anything to show for it until the player comes along. Leah is very productive. The synopsis says that she has a large portfolio of work. She's always working on something. Elliot showed his book to the world, basically, as soon as it was finished. But Leah's got this insecurity holding her back. The player's idea to do an art show or sell the paintings online isn't revolutionary. She's probably thought of it before. But she said specifically, what if people don't like my sculptures? I'd be crushed. She's holding herself back, as opposed to Elliot, who says that his skill with words is unmatched. She's been working on her art for an unknown period of time, most likely years. I think she's okay showing it to you in this scene because you're kind of friends, and also the piece is unfinished, so she can make the excuse of, it's not finished. But she's never shown her art to anyone else. She's never put herself out there. It's two very different things. Making the art, releasing the art. Making the art can be hard, but at least you have the safety and the security of privacy. Even if it's bad, you can always make it better. But once it's out in the world, you can't change it, unless you're George Lucas. Honestly, it's extremely relatable to want to go back and edit your old work years later and make the original version, like, impossible to find. I already kind of want to do that with the Alex video, and I released that like 3 months ago. So Leah's letting herself struggle financially, even though she has work ready to be sold, because of that overwhelming fear of, what if I'm not good enough? Especially as we learn soon that she changed her whole life just to pursue art. She's thinking, what if I did all of that for this and I fail? I don't think she particularly cares what other people think of her. She tells you she doesn't want to dance with you. I think that she just cares a lot about what people think of her art. She said in that earlier quote, I don't make art for money. It's just an urge that I have. She doesn't make it to show people. She just likes making it. It's an urge. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that a bunch of you guys also have a bunch of poems in your notes app that aren't going to go anywhere. But it's different for Leah when she doesn't have a day job, when she's pursuing this full time. She says it's hard to make money as an artist. This is her only potential source of revenue. In a perfect world, she would just be making her art. She doesn't have to show anyone. She doesn't have to worry about money. But this is capitalism we're talking about.
In a perfect world, men like me would not exist. But this is not a perfect world.
A passion becomes a skill, and a skill has market value. This isn't something that the game is particularly critical of. It's a capitalist game. I've seen critiques of Stardew Valley like this in other videos, like it's not the utopia people think it is, that it's essentially just like an idealized form of capitalism. But in ideology, it's also quite capitalist because Leah mentions that she's struggling for money, and your two choices are different ways that she can make money off of her art. And when she does these things, that's categorically the right choice. Like I said, in an ideal world, make your sculptures. Who cares if they're ugly? But she's worried about what people think of them. And I think it's partly because that would affect her livelihood. If people like the statues, then she's going to be fine. But if people don't like the statues, then she makes less money and she still continues to struggle. That's a lot of pressure hanging over her and hanging over most people who make art or make some kind of content. Do I make this for myself? Or do I compromise a little bit, make it more generally appealing for financial gain? Anyway, like I said, the game doesn't super engage with all of this, deep chat that we're having. She doesn't make art for money, she says, but she also uses it as her only source of income. And it doesn't really wrestle with the dichotomy of that. So overall, for a two-heart scene, it establishes Leah as an artist, someone passionate about her craft, someone who's insecure, someone who's struggling for money. It's not yet clear whether what she wants is to share her art with the world or whether she's seeking financial stability. She reacts as unsure to your suggestions on, how to share her art, but for different reasons. She rejects the internet idea because of money. She rejects the art show idea because of her insecurity. So I figure maybe she doesn't really know what she wants yet. Okay, that was a big two-heart scene. We didn't even talk about her definition of art. We're going to come back to that, I didn't forget. When you enter Leah's cottage, she's on the phone, talking to someone called Kel. She tells them she doesn't want to go back to the city, looks annoyed. She says stop calling her, and she hangs up. The player approaches, and she's surprised and embarrassed, says you must have heard her yelling. She tells you it was her ex on the phone, says, I guess I'd better tell you a little about it. They had an apartment together when she lived in the city. Leah would do odd jobs during the day and work all night on her art, and they barely made enough to scrape by. Kel would always nag her to go back to school, to study something with a lot of money in it, like business or medicine. Because Kel wanted a normal life. A house in the suburbs, kids, PTA meetings. Leah wasn't ready for that kind of life, so left for Stardew Valley to pursue her dream of being an artist. Then Leah asks you if that was selfish of her, and you get a choice. No, it had to be done. No, and your ex sounds like an idiot. No, but you would have been better off staying in the city. Yeah, a little. Yeah, but it's natural to care about yourself first. I said it had to be done. And she says, you're right. She just wouldn't have been happy back there. It was better for both of them to end an unsustainable relationship while they were still young and flexible. Then she says she's been thinking about that art show idea you had and has been working on more sculptures to display. She's nervous but excited about getting her work out there. She's glad you're on board with making Stardew Valley a premier art destination. That last part is, dependent on what you picked in the 2 heart scene. If you picked that she should sell her art online, she tells you she's saving for a computer. So in the 4 heart scene, we get Leah's backstory. This is the first time that the player learns that she moved here from the city. She does have one line of dialogue in Winter about how time moves more slowly in Stardew Valley as opposed to the city. But apart from that, she doesn't really reference it. And in the scene, we can kind of see why. She tells Kel she's not coming back. She doesn't want to hear from them. She's trying to put all of that behind her. In conversation, Leah can ask you, so why did you become a farmer? And if you answer, I wanted to escape my old life, Leah responds, that's pretty much the reason I came here too. In this scene, she does seem kind of reluctant to talk about it. You walk in on her on the phone and she seems embarrassed that you overheard her. And she says, I guess I'd better tell you a little about it, which isn't really like a choice to share the information with you. It comes across as reluctant, like she just feels like she has to give you the context after you heard her yelling at someone over the phone. Like we said in the 2 heart event, I think it's hard for Leah to have any real conversations about anything other than art. I think she's an intensely private person. You can't just walk into her cabin, even if she's in there, unless you have 2 hearts with her. I mean, in the game, you can't go into anyone's space until you have 2 hearts with them. But she spends a huge amount of time indoors alone, and she lives outside of town. So she says, hello neighbour, we both live outside of town. Does that mean something? So she made a deliberate choice to live outside of town, to get some distance from things. I think she came to Stardew Valley to find peace. She's had the hustle and bustle of the city. It wasn't for her. She doesn't really want to talk about her old life with you because she's trying to put it behind her. Not necessarily because she doesn't want to open up to you. She's focused on the here and now, on her art, on the future. So she changes the subject at the end back to her art by talking about, the art show or the computer. She does ask you if her decision was selfish though, which I think is interesting. You'd think if she wanted to get off the subject so much, then she would just change the subject without asking for your opinion about her actions. I feel like what happened is that over the phone, Kel called her selfish and that got to her. She was yelling at them. They clearly get under her skin. She's trying to move on, but Kel can't. And they're making that Leah's problem, calling her selfish, telling her to come back. Is she selfish? Most of us would say no. She was unhappy in her relationship. They obviously had very different life goals, so she left. She wouldn't have been happy. Best not to lead Kel on. Best to end it as soon as possible so they can both move on. From Kel's perspective though, it's debatable. It all depends on whether Leah was communicating all of this stuff, whether she was clear about them having different goals, being unhappy, wanting to pursue art above everything else. If she didn't communicate all of this stuff, then her up and leaving out of the blue would come across as selfish. But it does seem, from an outsider's perspective, like Kel was the selfish one, wanting Leah to make a lot of money so that they could get a house in the suburbs, calling her over and over, telling her to come back. It seems like what Kel wanted was for Leah to fit into a very specific box, to have the same goals and dreams, but Leah just didn't fit into that box and she didn't want to compromise. It all comes across as kind of like queer-coded, rejecting the house in the suburbs, rejecting kids, rejecting PTA meetings in order to go and, paint in the woods. It's a very sapphic urge. It's the rejection of that like heteronormative path that we saw with Alex as well. Seeing your future laid out in front of you and having the strength to say, no, I don't want that. To choose a different path, even if you have to create it from scratch yourself. With Alex, that's something he did in his 10 heart event. But with Leah, that's something she's done, in the past before you even met her. She does still go through character development in the game, but a huge chunk of her, character development happened off screen in the past. And in that way, she's got a lot of similarities to the player. I talked about this as well in the Emily video. The player used to work at Joja, but decided to quit and move all the way out to Stardew Valley to become a farmer. It kind of parallels Leah's story in that way, escaping the rat race, escaping the city, looking for peace and something fulfilling, rejecting a life that you're unhappy with. When she asks you that question of why did you become a farmer, another one of the answers is, it's more real than living in the city. And if you say that, then Leah responds, that's pretty much the reason I came here too. And if we go back to that other quote, hello neighbour, we both live outside of town. Does that mean something? I think it does mean something, Leah. You and her are both at this point in life of, you've tried it one way, living in the city, being in the centre of things, busy all the time, 9 to 5, city that never sleeps, But you've both independently come to the conclusion that that's not what makes you happy, and you've gone out there to find something that does, to find peace. Leah's one of the characters that takes a little bit more time to open up to the player. Elliot's 2 heart scene, your best mates. Alex's 4 heart scene, he's pouring his little heart out to you. But Leah is quite independent. I don't think she was lonely before she met you. She does say when you're married that she never had a lot of friends, but she doesn't ever seem sad about that. It's not like she needs you to fill some void inside her. She did that herself already. Okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go eat some cereal. That's some good cereal. I'm going through such a cereal phase. Cereal girly. So Leah's 6 heart has 2 parts to it. Part 1. You leave your house one morning and Leah is waiting for you. She comments on the beautiful day, then says she has a gift for you. It's a sculpture she's been working on, just for you. It's called How I Feel About Player. She hopes you like it. We fade to black. Part 2. If you enter the forest, Leah's trying to get a piece of fruit from a tree. She says it looks delicious, but she can't reach it. The player thinks, then picks her up. She screams, but then laughs and says thanks. She manages to get the fruit and you put her down. Leah says you're stronger than you look, and she gives you a piece of the fruit. We fade to black. Then she says she realised something. Even if her art career flops, she'll always have a friend to catch her on the way down. So let's go back to part 1. In terms of the actual sculpture she gives you, I don't think this is supposed to be analysed in terms of like a piece of art. I don't think the sculpture actually represents how she feels about you. It's the same statue she was working on in the 2 heart event. She's always working on the same statue in her cottage, and she still works on that statue in her cottage after she gives it to you. So I don't think this statue was designed by the developer to like express something about how she feels about you. I think it's just kind of like a generic Leah statue. Plus, I don't know shit about fuck when it comes to sculptures, so I wouldn't do a good job anyway. I need to get my story straight. Is it a statue? Is it a sculpture? Are they the same thing? I don't know. I don't know. I could Google it. I don't want to. So instead of looking at the sculpture, we're going to look at the act of her giving you the sculpture, saying it's called How I Feel About Player. This is like a much more concrete example of what I mentioned earlier about Leah feeling more comfortable communicating through art. She doesn't tell you how she feels about you. She shows you through the time and effort it took her to make the sculpture. It also shows how comfortable she is with you. She's worried in general about people not liking her work, but she gives a piece of her work to you because she's not worried about your judgment, because you're supportive. Like I was just saying, Leah takes a little bit more time to open up, but I feel like this is her opening up and being vulnerable. She's not only giving you a piece of her work, which is hard for her, but it's got all these like feelings wrapped up in it. So now I briefly want to go back to the 2 heart scene, her definition of art. She says that once you get past the outer layers, the true nature starts to show. She says that as a human, she's interested in how we interpret and shape the world around us, and that to her is art. So this seems a little bit antithetical. She bangs at the piece of wood and says that she's letting its true nature out, but she also says that she's like interpreting and shaping it. One seems like, you know, there's a sculpture inside the wood that's like dying to come out, and the other, it seems like she's interpreting and shaping the wood to her own imagination. But I think if we look at it kind of a different way, realistically, it's not like the wood actually has a sculpture inside it that's like dying to come out. It's not like that bit in SpongeBob.
How's this, Squidward?
There's a famous quote by Michelangelo. The sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. And like, great. Good job, Michelangelo. Very cool. But like, that's not literal, is it? It obviously takes a lot of skill and a lot of patience to chisel away that superfluous material, to decide, you know, what bits are the superfluous bits. And I think that process is what Leah is describing as interpreting and shaping the world around us. So if you pick the dialogue option of it's the same with people, she agrees with you. You know that once you get past the outer layers, the true nature starts to show. If we combine these 2 trains of thought, she's essentially saying that she thinks that getting to know people is like an art. You're choosing which parts to chisel away, and if you choose right, aka you don't try and kiss her, you get to the sculpture, you get to the true nature within. And she's giving you this sculpture at this point in your friendship where those outer layers are starting to break away. With the 6 heart part 2 scene, she's referring to you as her friend. She's being more vulnerable. The sculpture is essentially a symbol to say, you're past the outer layers now. I feel like I can show you who I really am. If we look at part 2, it's kind of a simplistic scene. It's a pretty simple like allegory. She's trying to get the fruit. She can't do it on her own. You come and help her, and then she's able to get it. She says you're there to catch her if she falls. She's trying to become an artist. You're there to help her to reach her goals. And with you, she's more able to reach the goal. And as she says in the scene, even if her art career flops, you'll be there for her. But it's interesting to think about her relationship with Kel in this context. They were barely scraping by. There was no financial safety net for her to pursue her art. There was no emotional safety net either. If she failed, Kel would have blamed her. They would have said, I told you so. That's not a good relationship. That's not a supportive partner. My partner, my husband, my wife, is very supportive. Every day he asks me how my most recent video is doing. Recently he's been asking me like, how's Krobus? Like he's checking up on him. You can get through a lot of incompatibilities in a relationship, but if your partner fundamentally does not believe in your passion, doesn't believe in you, and you feel like they're not there to catch you if you fall, you're wasting your time. Like Leah said, it's unsustainable. But she sees you as being there to catch her. She gives you her sculpture because she knows that you support her art, and these realizations are what leads to her change in mindset. In the 2-heart scene, she was quite resistant to getting her work out there. She was nervous. But in the 4-heart scene, she says she's nervous and excited. In the 6-heart part 1, she's getting her work out there by giving it to you. And in the 6-heart part 2, she's kind of like confirming to herself that if she really does go for this, then she'll be okay. Which leads us into the 8-heart scene. So there are 2 versions of the 8-heart scene, depending on what you picked in the 2-heart scene. Whether you suggested she sell her art online or whether you suggested she have an art show. We're going to talk about the online one first because it's less interesting. You walk into Leah's cabin and she's sitting at a laptop. She says she set up an online art shop like you suggested. The computer makes like a cha-ching noise, and she says that means someone bought something from her store. Someone called Mr. K keeps buying all her stuff. Leah thinks it's some rich guy who loves her art. The computer cha-chings again, and she's surprised, says that sale will cover her bills for a while. She thanks you for the idea and says it will fund her working on her art full time. Then she tweaks her CSS sheets. So Google tells me that a CSS sheet is used to format the layout of a web page, so she's just like tweaking how the website looks. Okay, now onto her art show. Leah comes to your house and asks if you're free this afternoon. She's doing her art show in the town square. She says to come to town between 3 and 5 p.m. When you get into town, basically all of the townspeople are already there, except for Jodie, Ken and Willie, along with 4 of Leah's sculptures. Leah greets you, says she's going to introduce her pieces. Wish her luck. She blushes as she thanks everyone for coming to her art show. She came to this town because she wanted to draw inspiration from the beautiful surroundings. And now, it feels like home. Then she introduces her sculptures. The first one is unnamed. A figure of a woman that looks like it's carved from stone. Leah tells us it started out as an exercise in human anatomy, but she ended up seeing the sculpture to completion. She left the statue's expression intentionally unclear. Then she approaches the wacky pink sculpture, says it's called post-dimensional null space, and represents the boundary of human imagination. The shape and colour came to her vividly while in a trance state. Then she approaches the moving statue of what looks like 3 egg people in top hats, standing on top of each other and jumping. Leah says she's been calling it eggheads. She wanted to create an animatronic humanoid statue to toy with the viewer's ability to properly attribute personhood to a physical entity. The last sculpture is the same one she gave us in the 6-heart part 1. It's called Wood Sculpture 3, and it's a celebration of her favourite sculpting material, wood. She finishes off, but then she says there's one last thing. She thanks the player, calls us her special friend, for giving her the idea for the show and the courage to go through with it. She gets some positive feedback from the townspeople, and she thanks them. Lewis then starts the bidding for the sculptures, starting post-dimensional null space at 5000 G. We pan away to show an annoyed-looking figure, standing at a distance. This is Kel. I'll just tell you that now. I'm not going to be coy about it. That's Kel. Okay, look, I don't know what to say about these sculptures. In the Elliot video, I went through his book and I kind of analysed it and tried to figure out if he's a good writer or not. But that's because I have a master's degree in creative writing. This shit, I have no clue. I googled around and I looked on the subreddit to see if there were any discussions of like the merit of her art, and I couldn't find anything. All I found was someone from 2016 on a forum saying that they thought her art was bad. I'm genuinely dying for anyone with an actual knowledge of art to make like a deep dive into these sculptures and tell me if they're good. I am going to give you my personal opinion, but that's just going to be personal opinion, along with the tiniest little bit of knowledge about modern art that is solely gained from that one Jacob Geller video. So, the statue of the woman. I should have printed them out and made a little prop. I would do it right now, but I can't be bothered. So, the statue of the woman. Unnamed. Maybe it's unnamed in the same way that Emily didn't give her parrot a name, out of respect. The statue standing there with her arms crossed, which could be compared to Kel standing there at the end with their arms crossed. The expression of the statue is amused, pained, or embarrassed. Maybe Leah could never tell what Kel's face was doing. Maybe that was Kel's reaction to her art, amused, pained, or embarrassed. So maybe it's like the statue itself is reflecting the anxieties of the artist. The art is self-conscious about itself. I think an issue with this though is that she doesn't communicate that. With modern art, again, very rudimentary knowledge, not my area. The whole thing seems to be about context. You can look at a piece of modern art and just be like, okay, cool. And then you read the little information plaque and you're like, oh. And then you look at it again and it's like, you get it. I went to the Tate Modern recently and that was basically what me and my husband did the entire time. Look at the piece, try to figure it out, do a bad job, then read the little plaque with all the context and then be like, oh, okay. And Leah doesn't really give us much of that here. If she told us it's a manifestation of feelings about my ex, my anxieties about my own art, cool. But unless you know her personally, like we do, you don't really get that context, so the statue just kind of looks like a lady who's a bit annoyed. So post-dimensional null space represents the boundaries of human imagination. The shape and colour came to her vividly while in a trance state. I did some research into this and it seems like a trance state can be a few different things. It can be like meditation basically, calming your thoughts to the point where the nature of the universe is like shown to you. Kafka said, just learn to become still and solitary and the world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. I hope I'm coming across as like academic. I got these quotes off of Goodreads. But it can also be like the flow state you get into when you're really rolling with something, when you're painting or you're like really into something and you kind of disassociate, like being in a trance while you're making the art, so that the art you're making comes from your subconscious. So it's unclear whether Leah got the idea for the shape and colour while meditating or whether she entered a trance state while she was working on the piece. And I think the title probably references that as well, like mentally she's in a trance state. You could argue that her mind entered like a post-dimensional null space. She says it represents the boundary of human imagination. So I guess this is her way of saying, this is me pushing the boundary of my imagination. This is me trying something different and really like going out there, which is cool. It's definitely different to all of her other work. If this is the boundary of her imagination though, it's a little bit tame. Is this really as far as she can go? Either way, it's probably still my favourite one. Now we come to Eggheads, the animatronic humanoid statue intended to toy with the viewer's ability to attribute personhood to a physical entity. I don't know. I don't know, man. They're fucking eggs. How is that a humanoid? She got a body like an egg. I feel like this has the potential to be interesting. The idea about like you want to attribute personhood to it, but you can't because it's an egg and because it's not real. Like how the human brain is just like hardwired to want to empathize with stuff.
I can pick up this pencil, tell you its name is Steve, and go like this. Oh. And part of you dies.
But I just don't find it, you know, particularly accessible. I can't reach it. Is this piece doing any of that successfully? I don't know. I feel like maybe you would need to be there to like experience it. Like how you really need to see like a Rothko to kind of get it. You need to be there and like have your brain try to connect with these eggheads to like feel the dissonance that she's talking about. I don't know. That's my best take. That's me trying to be smart. In all honesty, to me, it just looks like some eggs and some top hats. It's kind of ugly. And then we've got Wood Sculpture 3. The same wood sculpture she's always working on. The same sculpture she gave to you and said it represents how she feels about you. Again, I don't really think this is worth looking into because apparently it both represents how she loves sculpting in wood and also how she feels about you. To me, it just looks like a cool, like funky wood sculpture. I did find on the subreddit a bunch of people posting pictures of like similar looking sculptures that they'd seen. So I think this is just like an interesting thing to do with wood in general. Trees are very straight, so to see wood like bend and curve like this is quite unique and shows a lot of skill. So to conclude, is her art good? I don't know. But the show goes well. She sends you a note afterwards telling you it was a success and she sold nearly all of her sculptures. So, good for her. This is my mug with Jane Austen quotes on it. Oh, I like these videos are just becoming increasingly more and more show and tell. This is what happens because I don't have social media. It's like it has to go somewhere. So anyway, let's talk about the actual 8-heart scenes. In the version with the internet store, she's happy, she thanks you for the idea, so she's more confident, she's reaping the benefits of putting your work out there. This version of the scene is a lot more focused on money. You've got the cha-ching noise. Leah talks about how it will cover her electricity bills and she'll be able to keep working on her art full time. Whereas in the art show scene, it's a lot more focused on the art itself, on the positive reactions that she gets. In the note that she sends you after the art show, she specifically says that everyone was so positive and encouraging. So it's clear that reinforcement means a lot to her. She seems a lot happier in the art show scene than in the internet store one. That scene ends with her tweaking her website, so she's still working on it. She's not like happy with how it looks. Or maybe she's just doing like maintenance or something. I don't know. But it's a bit more of like a flat note to end the scene on, as opposed to the art show scene, which ends a bit more positively. If we think about Leah's arc up until this point, it's clear that she has gone through a change. You as the player are there for her, you support her, you encourage her, you give her the courage to get her work out there. I think she's used to being in this relationship with Kel, with, someone who doesn't believe in her, and it means so much to her to have found you, someone who does. If we go back again to what she says in the 2-heart scene, once you get past the outer layers, the true nature starts to show. Her platonic arc is about getting past those outer layers. I think they were there because of Kel, a kind of defensiveness, an unwillingness to be vulnerable. But now she's learned that you and Kel are very different people. In terms of dialogue, I did mention this in the Harvey video, but all NPCs, when you get them to around 8 hearts, they start to like hint that they want to move in with you basically. Farming looks so fun, etc. Leah is maybe the least subtle about this. Hi player, I was just thinking about you and your farm. I was imagining how good it must feel to harvest a big bunch of crops. Wouldn't it be nice to have help though? Farming sounds so fun. I want to try it someday. Even at 6 hearts, she kind of starts. I love being around animals. They're so innocent. Farm animals are wonderful too. It's hard to get fresh food in the winter. I bet your farm is pretty well stocked with food, huh? Okay, we get it, Leah. You want to marry me. You want to come live on my farm. I'm irresistible. But I think for her, this kind of comes from like a need for companionship. So if we read some more of her 6 hearts lines of dialogue. Do you ever get cold in that farmhouse of yours? Stop by my cabin if you want to huddle under one of my quilts and drink cider. Hello, player. Do you ever get lonely on that big farm? Stop by my cabin if you ever need someone to talk to. Foraging is a specialty of mine. Someday I'll make you a fresh salad. So she's not just saying, let me come live on your farm. She's also saying, come around my house. She's always seemed quite self-sufficient. She's never told you that she's lonely or anything. But I think as she opens up to you, she just like wants to spend more time with you. She likes having a friend. She likes spending time with you. She probably swore after her breakup to be like entirely independent, but she's realizing now that it's okay to have a friend, that not everyone is going to hurt her like her ex did, that it's okay to like need other people a little bit. And in the theme of that, let's make her our girlfriend. So from the wiki, at least, Leah doesn't seem to have any like dating specific dialogue. This could be a mistake. I have seen comments about the wiki missing certain things. But if we take it as a fact, then I think it's probably that she's not, like an especially romantic person. She's generally quite practical, especially when it comes to her words. We'll see this as well when we marry her. She's not like overly romantic. She's more practical. And that's not a bad thing. As we've already seen, she showed us her feelings through her sculpture. It's clear to us how much we mean to her at this point. I don't think she needs a line of dialogue about how much she likes us for us to just like, no. So if you're at 10 hearts with Leah and you walk into the forest, she's standing next to a table with what looks like a couple of salads and a bottle of wine. She says she knew you'd be passing through here at some point today, so she put together a surprise picnic. There's a vegetable medley with her special spice blend and a fresh salad made from foraged greens. She just wanted to say thank you for helping her get one step closer to being a real artist. Then she moves closer to you, and the player moves closer to, and you kiss. A distant voice says, well, 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 what do we have here? And who approaches but Kel, Leah's ex. In this version of the scene that I'm like showing you, he's a man, so I'm going to refer to him as such just for now. Leah's surprised to see him, asks what he's doing here. Now this bit branches on whether or not you had the art show or the internet store. For the art show, he says he came all the way from Zuzu City to see her sculptures at the art show, and to get her to come back with him. He says he wants things to go back to the way they were, and that he misses her. For the internet store, Kel reveals that he's the Mr. Kerry who's been buying her art. Leah is disappointed, says she thought it was a rich guy who truly loved her art. Kel says she was half right. Then he says he wants her back and misses her. Then the branches link up again. Leah is annoyed, says don't call her babe. He never supported her art before, and now that she's had some success, he wants her back? She says, you make me sick. She walks away from Kel, who says to come here. The player walks between them, and you get a choice. Punch Kel in the face, try reasoning with Kel. So first, we're going to punch Kel in the face. Leah says, oh my god, goes to check on Kel, who is knocked out. She says he'll make it, but that was pretty violent. If you instead try reasoning with Kel, He just says, "I have nothing to say to you. Get out of my way." The player moves aside and Kel asks Leah what she's doing with this simple-minded bumpkin. Then Leah turns around and punches Kel herself. Says, "You're a better person than Kel in every respect." She tells him to get out of here and never come back. Then the branches link up. She says, "Let's get out of here. Kel won't be bothering you anymore." We fade to black and she blushes and says you should find a more secluded spot this time. Hello, little muffin. Hello, little fingers. A visitor. Okay. So, important note, if you're playing as a boy, Kel is a boy. Oh, it's just a flying visit. If you're playing as a girl, Kel is a girl. The only difference in the model is like longer hair, cropped jeans, and like a higher waist. So I think it's finally time for the much referenced bisexuality tangent. I'm renting, so blue tack will have to do. Sorry if it looks a bit ugly. So I've got this whole bit like written out and I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I don't know, I'm feeling quite nervous. It's like quite vulnerable. I feel the need again to be like, I'm not trying to come for anyone. This is my opinion. I don't know. I haven't had a lot of like negative comments, but there have been some, so don't do that. Be nice to me. Okay, here we go. First things first. I am bisexual. If you are not my husband or one of my best friends or someone in my immediate family or someone that I worked with in the games industry or someone who watched the Emily video, then this is new information to you. I just came out. I am not what you would call out. I knew I was bi when I was 15 and I saw it being discussed on Tumblr in relation to Captain Jack from Doctor Who. And I was like, oh, that's the thing? You can be that? Well, that's what I am then. I always thought that I would just, tell people, like, come out or whatever as needed if I ever started going out with a girl. I've always been quite private, so I'm not the kind of person to, like, make big announcements about my life in any situation. And I met my husband at 19. He was my first, like, real partner, and we've been together ever since. And he's a man. So that need never, like, came up. This situation is sometimes discussed as being called straight passing privilege. I'm in this straight relationship, so to any casual observer, I'm straight. And I get to enjoy the benefits of that. No one is homophobic to me. No one is biphobic to me. No one questions my sexuality or my relationship. I get to live essentially as a straight person. And that is a privilege. I'm not denying that. If it weren't a privilege, I would have just told everyone that I was bi. But as it is, that would cause potential conflict. And I would rather take the privilege of not having to cause that conflict. But it's a very unique position to be in. Everyone assuming that, you're one thing when you're not. But it's not even that simple. Because I am that thing. I am attracted to men. But I'm also attracted to women. So it's not like I feel misunderstood. It's just that there's like a whole other part to it that goes unaddressed. And there's the question of, like, does it need to be addressed? Why do I have this feeling like, I want people to know, like it's important? Your sexuality doesn't define you. It's probably like one of the least interesting things about me, but it's part of my identity. It's just like, it's a feeling that's very hard to describe. As people, we like binaries, we like black and white. Bisexuality is a nuance. And that's, I think what leads to a lot of biphobia is the unwillingness to accept that nuance. If you're a girl and you're bi, you're actually just straight and you're looking for attention. If you're a guy and you're bi, you're just gay and you're in denial. Because everyone is just attracted to men, right? And I even get it like within my own brain, like internalized biphobia. I go back and forth constantly in my brain. Straight, gay, straight, gay. Am I pretending to be queer because I think it's cool? Is compulsory heterosexuality holding me back? Over and over for, 11, 12 years now. I keep having to consciously remind myself, there's not just two options. You don't have to just be one or the other. So all of this can be summarized with one word: erasure. In my own brain, I erase my bisexuality and try to push myself into one of these two boxes. I don't tell people because it's not really worth it. People saying that bi men are gay, bi women are just straight. It's denial. It's like wanting to live in a world where bisexuality doesn't exist. It's erasure. So this next part I'm going to word carefully for reasons I cannot get into, but that will probably become obvious. I used to work on a game. It was a dating game. You played as a woman. You could date men or women. If you were not dating some of the characters, they could date each other. We, as in the people on my team, wanted 2 of the men who were bisexual to date each other. Allegedly, forces external to the company told us that we could only do this as long as the player was dating a woman. So basically, you as a player would not be able to see this same-sex relationship of these 2 men unless you yourself were in a same-sex relationship. Down the line, another opportunity arose for us to canonize this couple to all of the players. Allegedly, we were told no for a second time. Even though in this second instance, it, like, game design-wise would have been a lot easier, we were still told keep the same-sex content for only the players in the same-sex relationships. Allegedly. In Minecraft. Just to note, this is not said to disparage the company I worked for. I did not name the company I worked for, and I was also mainly referencing forces outside the company. In Minecraft. Okay, so the result of this was that straight players would only see straight content, and only the queer players would see the queer content. This is my personal opinion. This move was done for profit. This was done to maintain the widest possible audience, you know, both potentially homophobic and queer players. The queer content is there if you look for it, if you're open to it, but if you're not, then you'd never even know that it was there. And this makes me think of queerbaiting, like actual queerbaiting, not whatever people are like accusing Harry Styles of. Supernatural, Sherlock. That's the same reason why they did that, right? Take Supernatural. Ugh. I'm trying really hard not to just do this. Okay, concentrate. Take Supernatural. You've got Dean, an otherwise very masculine character. He's a ladies' man. He's got that like cartoonishly deep voice.
I'll do this, Cass.
And he makes these references, you know, he makes a reference to a gay bar, to a drag queen. He's looking men up and down. He gets flustered by Dr. Sexy.
It's him.
To a straight audience or to a homophobic audience, they don't pick up on these references. They see him being flustered as like a joke, potentially like a gay joke. To a queer audience, to all of us who are on Tumblr, we pick up on these things. You've essentially got these 2 diametrically opposed audiences able to consume the same content in 2 different ways. And then the company who makes the content is able to profit twice as much by not committing to either side. So if we bring this back to the Leah scene, as I've mentioned a few times, I'm going to say it again. I'm not saying this to imply any intention, any wrongdoing, any malice. Covering my ass. But this move here, right, in the 10 Heart scene of if you're a boy, she's got an ex-boyfriend. If you're a girl, she's got an ex-girlfriend. It's the exact same shit. And this extends to the entirety of the game. If you're straight and you only romance characters of, you know, the opposing gender to you, you would have zero clue whatsoever that any of the queer content even exists. None of the other people in Pelican Town are in a queer relationship. It is not mentioned once, anywhere. In order to see any of the queer content, you first have to try and romance someone of the same gender. And in doing that, the game is essentially asking you to like make the first move. It's hiding its representation behind a condition. And that condition is, are you going to be okay with this? Because presumably if you're a girl and you're romancing Leah, you're not going to get angry if she likes you back. And it's deeper than that with Leah. Because as we discussed, what is she? Is she straight if you're a boy, gay if you're a girl, or is she bi in both situations? We don't know. The representation of queerness that we do get is so vague that it barely counts at all. People tend to describe her and other, you know, romanceables as player sexual. Whatever you are as the player, that's what they're into. And play sexual is not a real orientation. It's a game design tactic. The alternative to this would be to say all the characters are bisexual. They're into both men and women. But the game doesn't do that. It doesn't address the issue at all. And here we see that erasure. I appreciate the ability to romance anyone regardless of gender. I do definitely prefer it to like an entirely heterosexual Stardew Valley. And in a way, it's nice that being queer is not a big deal. But in not being a big deal, it's so flattened. Aside from an occasional line of dialogue saying like, I didn't know if you feel the same way about a guy. I didn't know I was into girls until I met you. The storylines are the exact same. The experience of being queer in this small town is brushed aside and everyone shows up to your wedding the same as they would if you were straight. As if at least, you know, statistically a few of them wouldn't have an issue with it. So take Leah's story. If you play as a girl, Cal is a woman. But if you go down the path of her starting an internet store, the person buying Leah's art is still called Mr. K. And then Leah says to Kel in this scene, I thought it was a rich guy who loved my art. And Kel says, she's half right. Which half? There's 3 claims there. Rich, guy, loves her art. So being half right doesn't make any sense. So I feel like it's essentially just the straight version of the story, like translated into being a queer relationship, but it's at its detriment because that part now doesn't make sense. Like how I said that in the 2-heart scene, Leah like blushing, flirting with you, and then hitting you with her hammer was quite clunky. This version, the queer version of the storyline, feels like an afterthought. Look, I've worked on games. I'm not an expert. I've only got 4 years of experience, but I've been there. I understand that most likely it was the simplest move, like code-wise, to just be able to date whoever. And it's quite easy in terms of complexity to just have like 1 extra line during the 10-heart scene. To add any more narrative complexity to the queer storylines would add complexity in the code. More time, more resources, more opportunities for things to break. But queerness is complex. It can't be represented in this half-hearted way as an afterthought, as just the straight relationship or like gender swapped. To me at least, it doesn't feel authentic. So far in this series, I've covered Alex, Abigail, Elliot, Emily, Haley, Harvey, and Krobus. And the only video in which I really covered the queerness was Alex, because that's the only one in my opinion where there's really like anything to say. It seems like with him, the time was taken. His confession during the 10-heart scene feels real, and it like changes his story. And there's also all of that added stuff of like his grandpa being homophobic. For the rest of the characters, it doesn't really like add anything to their character, including Leah. What does any of this tell us about her? Hi. Come on. We're talking about bisexuality. There we go. Both kitties. What does all of this tell us about her? Nothing. I can't think of anything interesting to say about it, you know? And that's kind of sad. Oh, my baby. Anyway, if you find representation in different ways within this game, if you think it's good representation for Leah to suddenly have an ex-girlfriend, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm happy for you. Like I said, it's complex. I'm not speaking for all bisexuals. We all have different ideas about what good representation looks like, and these are mine. And as I said, you know, it's a bit of a sore spot for me, based on past experience. If you disagree with me, you can tell me, but just like be cool about it, okay? So now we're going to look at the scene like we normally would. It's cute that she set you up a picnic. It goes back to what we said when we started dating her, that she's not particularly romantic with words, but giving you the sculpture was romantic. Setting up the picnic is romantic. And she brought her favourite foods and some wine, and it's a surprise. That's all romantic. She's just not like super good with words. And that's okay. This scene is actually quite interesting when we think about words. So it's quite violent. Either you punch Kel or she does. I think it's interesting how if you try and reason with Kel, they just say, I have nothing to say to you. The punch is the more effective option in this case. And Leah knows that because she punches Kel too. I think it's a culmination of how Kel's been calling her over and over, asking her to come back. And she said no a bunch of times. Kel at this point isn't really a person who can be reasoned with. Your attempt fails. Words aren't always effective. Sometimes you need a swift punch to the face. So I'm interested in Kel's attitude towards Leah's art. They say they came all the way from Zuzu City to see the sculptures. When it comes out that Mr. K is Kel, Leah says, I thought it was a rich guy who loves my art. And Kel says, you're half right. Which half? Rich or loves her art? It must be rich, right? Because they're buying all her art. She says one sale was enough to cover her electricity bill. So they're not cheap sculptures. But she tells you in the 4-heart scene that they were scraping by. Maybe they were scraping by because Kel was saving for that house in the suburbs. So they were putting most of their money away for that. I think that's probably the case because, number one, Kel still lives in the city despite losing Leah's income. So they can't be too hard done by. And 2, we're not really supposed to think that Kel cares about Leah's art. She tells us in the 4-heart scene that Kel didn't support her, kept trying to get her to get a real job. And she says in this scene that Kel is only here now because she's had some success. And, you know, she knows them better than we do, so I'm inclined to believe her. But Kel isn't really a very fleshed out character. They're quite two-dimensional. I think there is a world out there in which they really did come all this way to see Leah's sculptures, in which they bought her art online because they love it, despite not having the money to spare. Stardew Valley does tend to be quite strict with its morals. There tends to be like a right and a wrong opinion. And Kel is 1000% supposed to be like the bad guy. And they are. Don't get me wrong. They should have stopped calling Leah. They shouldn't have just shown up like that. But like from a certain perspective, they're more sympathetic. If Kel and Leah were barely scraping by in the city, that kind of financial insecurity is really stressful. They wanted Leah to make more money, but we don't know that that's conditional on her giving up her dream. Maybe at that point, she'd already been trying to get that artist thing going for years and had no success, and Kel was just being like pragmatic. I feel like, you know, we only get Leah's side of the story after they've broken up. I think it's entirely possible that Kel is just a person who like wanted to build a stable life. They were right to have broken up, definitely. But I think this situation is more nuanced than the game gives it credit for. It's all very like, you were holding me back, you hated my art, you told me to like be a corporate shill and go to PTA meetings. But in reality, it's just two people who wanted different things. And that's all quite flattened into this like black and white issue where you or Leah punch this person in the face and it's portrayed as like entirely justified. To be fair, I enjoy the punch. I always punch Kel. At that point, Kel is like super crossing some boundaries and basically stalking Leah. So I think it's okay. I enjoy my violent girlfriend. We support women's rights and women's wrongs. God. As for how this all fits into her arc, I think it's a confidence thing. It took her a while to leave Kel, even though she was unhappy. And even after that, she didn't block the number. Although I don't know if you can block numbers on like a fucking landline or whatever it is that she uses. Imagine picking up the phone and not even knowing who's calling you. If I get a call from an unknown number, that shit goes to voicemail. Though I do remember landlines. When I was a kid, I used to just like call random businesses in the yellow pages. Not even as a prank call. I would just call them and then they would be like, place that does this, how can I help? And then I would just hang up. Although I think I remember me and my sister asking a couple of random businesses if their refrigerator was running. Why am I telling you this? I don't know. There's some Fiona law for you. But in this scene, Leah stands very firm to Kel. I think it's because you're there with her. It's always easier to be strong if you have someone there to support you. That's why they let you bring a person with you into like an exam room. Me and my husband, we do this thing where if one of us has to like make a phone call we don't want to make, we just like sit next to each other and hold each other's hand. Neurodivergent couple things. So basically within this scene, we're continuing that theme of you support her, you give her confidence. And she's right. You never hear from Kel again. That's what you get. And with that, I'm going to ask her to marry me. Her engaged dialogue is, I'm a little nervous, but happy. I've always dreamed of living on a farm. I'm going to be so happy. So she's nervous but happy, which is so Leah. Classic Leah. She's learned through the art show that just because something makes you nervous doesn't mean you can't also be happy and that you can't also do it anyway. It's like that flowchart. Do it scared. She says she's always dreamed of living on a farm, which we already know because she told us a bunch of times. Again, not super romantic, but that's just our girl. And a lot of the engaged dialogue is like this. Even Elliot was like, let's make my cottage into a beach house, you know. It must be last Saturday because I'm gonna get married. It's really special that like I brought that prop physically with me to my wedding. I hope that shows like how much I like making these videos. In all the wedding stress, I like remembered to find that and put it in my bag, and on the wedding day I like took a picture with her. And I like 50% did it for myself, but I like 50% did it so I could put the picture on this YouTube channel. Love you guys. So Leah's room in your house, I feel like it kind of glitched out when I recorded this because the light is coming from not where the windows are. It looks like ghosts. But yeah, she's got some paint, some paintings, and an easel. She works on her sculptures outdoors. If you talk to her, she says, don't look too close, it's a work in progress. So she continues to work on her art. Mind if I add some architectural flair to the woodwork around here? My chisel hand is itching. One of these days, I'll have to do your portrait. I made a little wood sculpture today, but it was so ugly, I threw it into the fire. I think to become a great artist, you have to be critical of your own work. I think that last one is interesting because it probably links to the game's art. Anyone who's ever looked at the wiki will have noticed that every character has like 10 different iterations of art. These ones are Leah's. I was trying to figure out how to get a Shane cameo into this video, but here it is, organically. Because do you know what haunts me? Do you know what haunts me? Original Shane. I'm not printing that out. Look, I'm not one to criticise people's art. I can't draw for shit. But I would throw this guy into the fire as well. Wait, we need a palette cleanser. There we go, that's better. Shall I give you a real palette cleanser? I can't look at it. I can't look at it. He gets to me. I feel like I'm blushing. Giggling. Kicking my feet. So, Leah enjoys life on the farm. She finds it peaceful. I had a nice relaxing time today. How did your day go? It's so quiet and peaceful in the evening. Nothing to distract you from the experience of living. I love that last quote. I feel like that sums her up so well. Nothing to distract you from the experience of living. I feel like that's really what she's been searching for while she left the city, why she comments about smells and tastes and sounds. She's just someone who appreciates life so much, has such an interest and curiosity in the world around us, and I think that manifests through, her foraging and her art. She also says, "It's so much lovelier here at night than the garish glow of the city. Everything worked out perfectly for me. I'm very lucky." So she's had this goal of living freely, living without distraction, and she's achieved that goal here with you. It's nice that she still feels, like it's peaceful with you around. You'd think maybe living alone was more peaceful to her. If she lived in this exact same house with Kel instead of you, I'm sure that she wouldn't feel the same way. But here she describes her life as perfect. Very cute. And it links to some other lines of her married dialogue where she starts to become like a little bit Emily coded. "It's going to be a special day. I can sense it. The flow of time is so delicate. Even the tiniest decision changes the future forever. Did I ever tell you? When you first moved here, I had a dream that we'd be together someday." Emily pilled. So this is a lot more like spiritual than we're used to from Leah. She's usually like a down-to-earth kind of girl. But if we look at one more piece of her dialogue, I think we get kind of an explanation. "Sometimes it's hard not to believe in destiny. The fact that I decided to move here and that we found each other. It could have gone entirely differently at any point." So she's so happy being with you. Her life was worked out so perfectly that it's developed this spirituality in her. The chances of everything lining up perfectly so that you met each other were so slim, but it happened. And she can't help but feel like it was fate. And that's so romantic. Even though she's not, Elliot, she's not like, "My heart soars when I hear your muddy boots on the wood." She's like, "I'm so fucking happy with you that it feels like it must have been some kind of divine intervention." We love that for her. We love that for you. We love that for me. We love that for us. For us. So one last thing, when she gives you a salad, she says, "I was thinking, life's too short to eat bad food. Luckily, we live in one of the best regions for fresh greens and vegetables. Here, I made you a healthy salad. I'm surprised you aren't sick of my salad yet. And I've made you a meme. I haven't made a meme since Meme Generator." But here it is, you ready? That's a certified Fiona Sangster meme. Copyright 2024. Okay. Let's do 14 hearts. So the 14 heart event has 2 parts to it. When you leave the house, Leah stops you and tells you she has an idea. Meet her in Cindersap Forest tomorrow at noon. She's going to teach you how to paint. So on the next sunny day, you get part 2. You and Leah are behind easels and Marnie is your model. Marnie asks Leah how much longer it will be. Her knees are quivering, her thighs are whimpering, her palms are sweaty. Mum's spaghetti. Her thighs are whimpering. Is Lewis around? Leah tells her no squirming. She asks you what style she should do, and you get a choice. Classic country portrait, colourful retro pop art, minimalist modern. I'm a rustic kind of girly, so I went with classic country portrait. Leah says she thinks Marnie will appreciate that. She asks how yours is coming along, and you get another choice. It's a masterpiece of fine art. I'm trying my best. It looks like chicken scratch. I said I was trying my best, and she says that's all she asks. If you keep trying, you can't help but get better. Marnie interjects, says to make her look good, and Leah shushes her. She coaches you on your technique a little, then her own painting is done. She holds it up to you and asks what you think. Marnie loves it, says it's going up in her room. Then Leah asks to see your painting, and goes to look and reacts badly. She says it's interesting. A different kind of approach, for sure. Marnie comes over to take a look, and we get a painting reveal. Leah says that Marnie can hang both in her room, and Marnie generously lets us keep our monstrosity, as it's our first ever painting. The painting gets added to your inventory, and we fade to black. So here's a closer look at the painting. It's quite crude. It makes Marnie kind of look like a potato. Honestly, it's genuinely better than I could do. I think this is so funny. I kept that painting up in my house as I romanced all the other spouses to get the screen recordings, I really like how it's a physical item that you can keep. Every time I saw it, I thought of Leah and our time together. And this ugly potato Marnie was hanging over all my other relationships. So in this scene, Leah is combining everything she loves in the world. The outdoors, art, you. There's even the picnic table from before with the salads and the bottle of wine. I wonder if it's a do-over of the 10 heart event since that was interrupted by Kel. Now that Kel's out of her life, she has the freedom and the confidence to do as she pleases. I like that she tries to teach you how to paint. and that you're bad at it. It's very funny. I tried to teach my husband how to crochet and he managed to make a chain and then we both got really frustrated and gave up. It's an act of love, of sharing that part of yourself, wanting to connect over something that means a lot to you, even though the other person might just be like humouring you a little bit or might be really bad at it. She's not very patient with Marnie. She shushes her, she tells her to hold still, but she's patient with you because she loves you, because you make her feel peaceful and happy. What's up, gamers? This is Editing Fiona. I'm just butting in because I forgot to talk about the musical theme. I always forget the musical theme. I always forget to talk about the musical theme. So Leah's musical theme is called Land of Green and Gold. So that's obviously very like reminiscent of nature. Green is grass. Gold, I guess, is like crops, wheat. Could also be the sun. Did you notice my jumper has a chicken on it? Got it for my birthday. And I think it's interesting because her musical theme plays during her 2-heart event and then it also plays during her 14-heart event. And I'm wondering about the significance of that. Could it be because those are the scenes without Kel mentioned in them? In the 2-heart event, you know, she's not really thinking about that because she's moved away, she's starting her new life. In the 14-heart event, you've punched him in the face. You don't have to think about him again. I think it could also signify like a through line for her. Like even though she's gone through quite a lot of change, she's still Leah. The Leah we know and love, who's obsessed with salad, who's obsessed with nature. I don't know much about music either. But when I listen to it, it does feel quite free. So I guess, yeah, it could be that thing with Kel where it's like, she feels free. I don't really think there's much else to say about this scene. I think it works well as a 14-heart scene because, as I've said in, you know, like all of the other videos, sorry, I'm trying to accommodate for new viewers as well as returning viewers. Everyone's welcome. So like I've said in most other videos, the 14-heart scenes, for me at least, are like a representation of your married life, the culmination of that character's journey. I think it works well as an end to her journey because she's out here in that same area where Cal interrupted you, and she's free to essentially like overwrite that to forge a new path with you. But I think it works best as a representation of your married life. I didn't vibe much with Leah before researching this video. I know she's like the favourite bachelorette for a lot of people, but I've always been more of like an Emily and Haley girly. But I found myself really vibing with her because it seems like all she's been searching for is peace. She doesn't really care about like acclaim or money or anything. All she wants is to work on her art in a beautiful place with someone she loves. And like, same. Take me with you. So to conclude, my opinion about the Leah storyline has really like improved the more I looked into it. Like I said, I never really like thought much of her. But you know, there's a lot of like branching. I really like how you get the 2 different 8-heart scenes. I had an issue with the same thing in the Elliot storyline, you know, where the choice you make in the 2-heart scene affects the 8-heart scene. But that was very different, I think, because you kind of choose the genre of his book. I think you giving her the idea and then supporting her to go through with that idea makes a lot more sense. It feels like an amount of player agency that is just right. Not too hot, not too cold, you know. In terms of all of the bisexual tangent related material, I think in a casual sense, that's not really going to affect your enjoyment of the game. I think unless you have quite specific issues, like me, you'll still enjoy it the same, you know. Even I didn't really think about this as an issue until I saw a really good YouTube video by Verily Bitchy that I will link down below. She also spent a lot of time holding salad waiting outside Leah's house, so yeah, that video is what got me like really thinking about all of this, so definitely check it out. I don't know, I'm torn between saying that I'm being quite nitpicky and like, you know, defending my opinion. I think I'm at the point making YouTube videos where I'm just trying to like anticipate the comments, and I don't think that's a smart thing to do. I think that if this is my opinion, if that's what I want to say, then I should say it. And like I've said 100 times, you can disagree with me. Feel free. Maybe I'm wrong. So, Leah's summit dialogue is, I think we've both found what we were looking for in this place. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here with you. And that really ties together those themes, right? The parallel of you and her both moving here to escape your old lives and find something real. The way that she feels like her life is now just like genuinely perfect. Her heart is full. Her crops are flourishing. She does say when you have high hearts during your marriage, living here, I feel like I'm on the summit of a great mountain. So every day is the summit for Leah. The summit dialogue kind of represents like tying together of themes, a nice representation of your relationship. It's the high point. It's the highest point. But for Leah, every day is the highest point. It's so romantic. I'm like, I can feel myself like getting emotional. I think it's the wedding. I'm just like full of romance. Plus I'm PMSing. PMSL. Okay. Take a deep breath. Let's just bask in the nice romantic feelings. Let them course through your body, do a bit of a body scan, feel the romantic feelings inside you, and let them process, let them fade away, let them pass out of the top of your head, okay? Okay, now we're gonna get divorced. No, I'm kidding. So when I went to go get the screen recording for the divorce dialogue, her cabin was locked because only her friends can enter uninvited. So I waited outside in the rain to talk to my ex-wife. And when I spoke to her, she said, "I've realised I'm happier by myself. So just leave me be." Why don't I believe her? Why do I feel like this is what she said after she left Cal? When we met her, she was very independent. She didn't feel like she needed your presence in her life, but she grew attached to you. She opened herself up. And now her heart is broken again. She goes back to that same coping mechanism of isolating herself, of pretending like she needs nothing and no one. She let herself depend on you. She's not going to make that mistake again. So just leave her be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she is happier by herself. But we'll never know, because we don't know her anymore. Like we said, she tends to speak through her actions, but we won't get any actions from her anymore. She has become a mystery to us. Once again. Sorry, I didn't know how to break the tension. I thought I'd just burp. Okay, we have reached the end of the deepest dive into Leah from Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to all of my wonderful subscribers. I love all of you individually. So like I said at the start of the video, I'm gonna put my whole Fiona-sy into it. I feel like that doesn't work. Do people still make that joke anymore? I don't know. I don't really use social media. My husband has to like tell me what the jokes are. Who out here Fiona and they sangster? I hate that. I hate that. She star on my dew till I valley. She starred you on my valley till I crowbus. Oh god. So yeah, like I said at the start of the video, I'm gonna, be working on these pretty much full time. My aim is to put out a video every 2 weeks. And I think that we're also going to be getting sponsors, potentially, from next video, which is very exciting. I have been unemployed for 9 months, and I started making these videos just because I really wanted to, and because I've always been very, very camera shy. So this was like part of my way of, I don't know, like self-therapy, because I can't afford therapy. But yeah, to have it have like turned into a potential like path for me moving forwards is like such a blessing. I'm really struggling not to like make a joke out of it. But I'm like really grateful. So thank you. Okay, I hope you have a nice day. Next time we will be doing Maru. I don't know shit about Maru. I'm excited to find out. So subscribe to my channel. I almost forgot to do the call to action. Bad YouTuber. So subscribe, give it a little thumbs up if you're so inclined, and I hope you have a good day. I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh, I really thought that was going to be like tied into my hair.